Like, where's your common sense? Shouldn't you just have some common sense? There's a video about the nail in the head. This lady, she has a nail in her head, and she's like, I don't know, there just feels like there's this pressure, and it hurts. And he's like, that's because you have a nail in your head.
And you were crying, and I was like, oh, what's happening? What's wrong? And you're like, I don't know. I'm just crying. It was actually one of those times as a parent where you're like, don't laugh. This is not the time to laugh.
Welcome. Come on in. We're so happy you're here. My name's Natalie.
And I'm Ginger.
And we are talking about how my mom is traveling through life with her 3 learning disabilities, ADHD, Auditory Processing Disorder, and Dyslexia. And this is My Mom's Brain and Me. So this is my mom, Ginger. She lives in Idaho, married with 6 kids, and she is such an inspiration to me.
And this is my oldest, Natalie, and she's married with 2 kids living in Virginia.
And today, we really wanted to dive into a life lesson that my mom has taught me. And it all boils down to that there is no such thing as common sense. Common sense is not real. And that it's just like when people say like, oh, like, where's your common sense? Shouldn't you just have some common sense? That's what we're here to talk about today. So, let's start out with some examples of what are we even talking about with that? Do you have one right off the top of your head?
I made notes. So, there's somebody who, I can't remember her name. She does videos, and she moved from somewhere to Texas, and she went outside and laid in the grass for some video for something. I can't remember all the details, but I remember seeing in the comments everyone completely freaking out because they're like, what are you doing? You don't do that. And so then there was, sure enough, a follow-up video. She got bit. There's fire ants in grass in Texas, and I didn't know that. And so I didn't, the whole thing was an experience for me of the back and forth and the follow-up video things. And so people who grew up and lived in Texas, immediately when they saw that, they're like, what are you doing? That's common sense says you don't lie in the grass. And so, so there's examples of very much what you do in water. Another thing is there was a time I was living in New Hampshire. We had a pond in our backyard, and I would go and swim in the pond. And there's other places where you don't swim in the water. For example, I think Florida and some other places down in the South in the United States that there's alligators.
Oh, even in like small bodies of water?
Snapping turtles. That's, again, I haven't lived down there, but that's my understanding is that you don't just go and jump in any water anywhere. And
well, like, with the ants thing, like, yeah, I wouldn't know. We lived in Washington for my whole childhood. That's where I grew up. And yeah, we laid in the grass all the time. It's normal.
Yep.
Sorry, were you going to share another one?
Oh, just the other thing that comes to mind is, for example, Southern California, there's a lot of beaches where people go and walk the beaches, and you're wearing flip-flops or you're even in bare feet. But I've heard stories of people camping and then going for a walk in like New Mexico or Arizona, or that you wouldn't wear flip-flops walking through the sand because there's rattlesnakes and scorpions. And so even though it's really, really hot and you'd think, oh, well, it's sand. And so there's a lot of play. And then there's the whole world of where, I don't know, different bugs, creatures, animals.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, another one is leaving graham crackers out on the table uncovered. Like even just saying that, people know exactly. Some people will say never, you never do that, and other people are like, we do that all the time, and it's because humidity. You'd have soggy graham crackers within how much time if you didn't cover up your graham crackers or any kind of crackers.
Right. Any kind of crackers. Yeah. And so that a lot of these examples are like geographical examples of common sense that you just learn from like growing up in the area where you live. And I wouldn't know about that ant thing if somebody didn't tell me. But of course it would be like common sense to the people who grew up there. Growing up near a river, I grew up near a river, and it's one of those sad things that happened is that there would be people who would die because they'd try to like swim across the river. And growing up and hearing about is that like, but you don't swim across the river.
And especially certain times of year.
Oh yeah.
That is extremely, extremely dangerous. So even if somebody was going to get in and swim certain parts, that absolutely you wouldn't during certain times of year, because just how far under the water, even if it looks very calm up top, the undercurrent is so strong.
Yeah. And so geographically speaking, and so there's different things that's like, oh, well, like, okay, well, then you need to like go learn about it. Okay. But then there's still people who always say like, okay, but it should just be common sense. So how has, and I've never actually heard anybody else say it in this way or like talk about this. That there's no such thing as common sense, but it's something that you have taught me. And I don't think that I would have gleaned this from my own life if you hadn't like pointed it out and like continually told it to me. Because for me, especially growing up, I'm a little bit better now, but especially growing up, the world is either like black or white. And so for you spent a lot of time explaining to me that there's a lot of gray in the middle. And so that was something that had to be explained to me. So for you, how has having is this something that you learned from having learning disabilities in your life?
I think it's a combination. I think a big part, yes. I think my personality plays a big part. But additionally, moving around as much as I did, because there was, I think I counted up and it was 13 different schools that I attended. And I'm counting college, any school building, I'm counting. And so, backing up to say, where did I learn this, or how did I learn this? Was that the question?
How has having learning disabilities, caused you to like get this there's no such thing as common sense lesson from life? Sorry, that is really weirdly questioned.
What I'm picturing is really the times when I would walk into a new school and everyone was just doing the same thing. And so the older I got and going to a new school, that there were these unwritten rules that everyone just knew and followed and just did. And another part, like with Gretchen Rubin's The Four Tendencies, and I'm a questioner. And so if I'm seeing everybody do something, then my brain is like, okay, but why? Okay, but why? And sometimes, maybe even a lot of times, there's a very good reason for it. So back to this card that says, if there's a sign, don't lie on the grass, and that's posted in Texas, there's a good reason for that. But anybody else, when they come, they're like, okay, but why? Well, there's a good reason for it. And so either I just don't know I just currently don't know the good reason, or maybe there was a reason back when, but now it no longer applies. Another story that's coming to mind is what the kind of joke, but also maybe it's probably really happened, is that the newlywed couple where she's preparing dinner and she's cutting the end off the ham before she sticks it in the oven to cook it. And the new husband is like, why are you doing that? And she's like, well, this is how you always cook the ham. Okay, but why? Well, I don't know. My mom always did it. And so she calls her mom. They're like, Mom, why do we cut the end off the ham? She's like, I don't know. My grandma always did it. And so they call grandma and she's like, oh, well, the pan I had, the ham was always too big, so I had to cut off the end so the ham could fit in the pan. And so it's things like that sometimes there's tradition. Sometimes there's things that just keep happening just because nobody's questioned it to say, okay, why are we still doing it this way? So using that words of common sense, the wife, if they weren't curious and she just said, well, had an annoyance with him, well, common sense, this is how you do it. We've always done it this way. And so to be curious, to say, why are we doing this way? Or why is that person not participating in this, quote, common sense that everybody knows? Okay, well, there might be a reason. There might be a good reason. Either they don't know, or they have another good reason of why it doesn't apply or it doesn't work, or there's a better way for them.
Yeah. With you're like, if there's a sign posted in Texas, I think that would be like the common sense almost would be like the fact that there maybe wouldn't be a sign. It'd be like, well, we don't need to put a sign because everybody just knows. And that's why I think in a lot of larger cities that I've seen, there is more signage about things, like maybe don't lay in the grass or something like that, or don't dive off the bridge into the river, or different things like that, because there's enough turnover and new people, as opposed to, I know you live in a small city, I live in a small city, and there's a lot less signage in the small cities than in the big cities, because there's not as much turnover, and people in smaller cities even just they can tell you whose house and be like, oh, that's so and so's house, like, but that was like 50 years ago. They're like, oh yeah, that was so and so's, and this so and so's and so and so's house. They sold it, and now, and they're like, I don't even know who lives there now, but it's so and so's house. So we talked a lot about is the things that different kids would do at the schools. Do you remember anything specific that'd be different from school to school?
Right now, one of the things coming to mind is lunchtime, for example, but I'm not remembering specifically the foods. But there was some places where certain foods were fine and acceptable and okay. And then you move to another school and it was, oh, that's the worst. Don't. And yeah, I'm not remembering the food specifically, but I tasted it and I'm like, it tastes the same to me. I'm not seeing a big difference. And so there must have been some story somewhere or an individual who made a comment or yeah, I'm not quite sure. Another thing is on the playground of what toys or things to do at recess was okay and acceptable and what was not okay. 5th grade, I only went to school at that school for 5th grade. And I remember getting there and the first day out at recess, and there was a tire swing. And so sometimes the tire is where it's hanging by one string, same as it would if it was driving upright.
Oh, yeah.
But it was on its side and it had 3 chains that it was hanging from. And so you could spin it around, you could, and I love spinning and going fast. And so I remember the teacher had some, oh, well, who can, showed the new kid around. And so somebody raised their hand and it was then her friends. And so there was, I don't know, 4 or 5 of us walking around, and they were just walking around. And I was like, oh, the tire swing, and nobody's on it. And they were not getting on that. They had new clothes and they're like, no, nobody goes on that. Nobody wants to. And I was thrilled. But I don't know if I did on the first day. Maybe I waited till the second day because, new place. I don't want to, I was interested in making friends and having friends. And so, okay, well, if that's not what we do, then I'm not going to do it. And at some point I was like, wait, I really would rather be on the swing than just walking around all recess. And now that I know what I know, I do realize that physical movement is huge. To the point where, when the app on my phone to get a certain amount of steps, and sometimes I can even now get kind of frustrated or discouraged about, well, I have this that I need to get done today, and there's this and that, and but I'm thinking, but if I don't get a certain level of movement in, then it's not going to make any difference anyway, because it affects how I interact with my brain. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. and or that my brain agrees to participate, but also mood and emotions, that it is something that I have to pay attention to and navigate, because it takes less time to put in the time to do the movement than it does to try to fight with or not fight with certain emotions. And so let's do the movement. And I feel like I'm getting off a little bit here, but just to add that grouping things, and not to just say, oh, I'm just getting my steps, that's the only thing I'm doing. Okay, can I be listening to a audiobook that I've been wanting to listen to, or how many other things that I can group together while I'm doing movement.
Yeah. And that's so important. And whenever people talk about mental health, exercise is usually something that comes up. And I've seen, I like the reels now that have come out that'd be like, going on my walk for my health, then like upset that like it actually worked. Can't believe it worked and I feel better.
I feel that it is frustrating. I can't just do what I want to do anytime I want and have it be okay.
No. Especially as we keep continuing getting older. But especially, and there's a lot of neurodivergent people and kids that having more physical tactile stimulation, even more than just exercise, does help. So that's good. I'm so glad you brought it up. So this different common sense things that either kids just did at school or things. So we've talked a lot about like geographic location, common sense things that, okay, you don't go swimming in the river. Another big one that that it just like, I feel like, and I'm guilty of this too. Like, I feel sometimes that it should be common sense, but it's not. We lived, my husband and I lived in Idaho for a while, and Yellowstone was only like 3 hours away. So we'd just wait every year for the reports to come of people who'd be gouged by a bison because they were trying to pet it. And you know, in their defense, I don't think anybody taught them that you don't go touch a wild animal. And it is kind of sad, actually, that I think a lot of these tourists that do come to Yellowstone happen to live in like very large cities. Like the fact that that you even like get in a car and you just like drive, and there's like trees and land, and it's not just city, that you can just like drive really fast, like, and so to like actually see a wild animal, and like that would be so cool, and it's just standing there, and there's only this like little fence there, because Yellowstone is so huge, you can't just like wall up the whole thing. It's a wildlife preserve. That's where they live. So there's like common things that people would consider to be common sense. One thing I think we've talked about it before on this podcast is driving, but that I feel like that's a good example of where people just assume that like, oh, well, that should just be like common sense. You just do da-da-da. And I don't even have a good example of like what people consider to be common sense in driving. I just know that people think they know how to drive and that their way is the only right way to drive. But I was also thinking this morning, like, okay, except for we all are enrolled in like driver's ed. there's different things about like being taught rules of the road that has to be taught, like driving on the right side here in America. Okay, if you go to another country, you drive on the left side of the road. And that's just something somebody made up. There's a lot of countries where there's no lines on the road. People just drive. And there's no, like, oh, your turn, my turn, like, as many stoplights. They're just going. As long as you don't hit anybody, you're good. So, I don't know. Does that feel like something you've heard before? I'll be like,
yes, that does sound very stressful.
no, but does that sound like something that like people have like either mentioned or they mention a lot? They'll be like, oh, but that's just common sense. With driving.
Yeah, well, and even you saying that, and yeah, where did this come from? Where did this stem from? Is that most of the time when I hear it, I'm trying, and I've been trying to think if there's ever a time when I've heard it spoken, presented in such a way that is patient or kind. That most of the time when I've heard it being said, it's said in such a way that it comes across as dismissive or annoyed, irritated. And so not only talking about location specific of common sense, but then also time periods. So if it was 3,000 years ago, there would be certain, quote, common sense of that time period. And I feel like there's certain movies where they really play into that, of the back and forth. If somebody's out of their, if they've time traveled, that's a big part of the storyline, is their experience. Not having the common sense of that time period. One thing that's coming to mind is like health. But for somebody to say it, it's are they saying it because they don't know, or they're being kind of lazy and they don't want to explain it, or they don't know how to explain it
for someone to just say like, oh, this should just be common sense.
Yeah. There's a lot of times where for me it's felt very dismissive. That I don't want to take the time to explain this, and it can be very frustrating for people. I could definitely see where it would make sense to a lot of people that there's certain things that I should know, that I should be able to keep an understanding of and keep doing regularly because of my age and my experience, and it's frustrating to me too.
Unless you have an example right now, I have one.
Okay.
That, because for me, having studied child development and having watched you raise, I'm the oldest of 6. There's a 15-year gap, so I watched you raise a lot of young children.
15-year gap from the oldest to the youngest, not from you to the next one down.
Right. that just to say that there was always a baby in the house, pretty much, and always a toddler. So I watched young kids being raised a lot. And so for me, it's been part of my training, quote unquote, that that babies don't understand anything, that that they need to be taught. And sometimes, depending on the individual and the individual child, that can look different for each child. So something I needed to explain to my son the other day was physical contact, even like giving up when you give somebody a hug, that if he was sitting down and he stood up really fast to give a hug,
I can feel it now. I can feel it.
And so as the loving adult is coming down to give the small child a hug, and they just stand up really fast. Ow, ow, ow. My husband ended up getting a thumb in the eye. Which as a young child, that's not something that he was understanding. He's still learning how to control his body, in addition to controlling emotions, like learning how to verbalize what he needs. Like, there's all these different things that children are learning, but as adults, it can very easily be like, well, that's just common sense. As you are coming to give somebody a hug, you actually need to slow down. But that's something that I felt that in that moment, I took the time to explain to him, and we practiced a little bit, that, okay, as somebody is coming towards you, and if you're the one, he wanted the hug. So if you're wanting a hug, you need to slow down as you approach somebody physically. And this has been something we've talked about multiple times with him, that as he's gotten bigger, I'll be like, hey, you're getting really strong. You're stronger than you were. And so that means that you need to pay attention more and slow down as you're moving fast, so that you don't hurt yourself or others or things like that. That was my example. I didn't know if you had anything to add.
I'm still having the visual of the number of times that, yeah, you get the head in the chin, and if your tongue isn't,
oh yeah,
or in the nose, the head in the chin or the head in the nose. There's no way I know how many times that has happened. But immediately, you even starting the story, and I'm flinching already.
So I imagine growing up, especially as a child, that if no one thought to take the time to explain things to you, it'd be like, oh, you should just like be able to just understand that and like see it and understand. There's different people that I follow on Instagram that have talked about like the toddler brain, that it needs to be more tactile and physical things that they can do. So like, I'll say like when I'm driving, the kids want me to change the song or like grab them a snack or something. And depending where I'm at, if there's too many cars around or I'm going through like a windy road, instead of just saying like, oh, sorry, I can't do that because I'm driving. They've never driven before. They don't know what that feels like. And so that doesn't actually sound like a good reason to them. That doesn't make any sense. Why can't you? Because sometimes, other times, you do change the snack or change the song. And so to say instead, something that they actually can understand is my hands are busy, they have a job to do on the wheel, and my eyes need to be watching the road. And so changing the way that things are said so that it's understandable for them and for something that they haven't yet experienced.
Yeah, and you saying that reminds me of one of the times that I moved from one school to another. the school that I was moving from, they hadn't gone over measuring cups yet, or measurements specifically in regards to cooking. And then moving to the next place and going in, and here comes the tests that are reviewing that they already did it. And so that's just one example of that specific area that completely missed, and it affected me. And that's going to happen
when you move around to 13 schools. Yeah.
But that's just one example that, how many other little things that it was told here, but not there. And back to the people who go to the park and try to pet the big wild animals. There's a lot of times where I do try to think that because it's so much a part of my life ongoing still, of, there's no such thing as common sense. But you sharing that, immediately I felt, oh, wow, I fall into that category of, why would somebody do that? Because I've lived, even though I moved around a bunch, I've still lived all the places that I've lived. My whole life has been, you don't go and pet wild animals. And so, yay, I fall into that category of, there we go. There's mine, of that I didn't realize that I had, because it's so much a part of my life, is don't go pet wild animals. But now that I know that, I can think, if I was born in the city, a bigger city, where it was tall buildings and
subways,
lots of concrete pit. And so where would I see my animals? They're either in the zoo or on shows and TV, right?
Or
how many,
like, what you would learn about would maybe be like farm animals, and maybe there's like a petting zoo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, see, I hadn't even got to the part of thinking about that, but I'm thinking specifically of buffalo or bison, that
right.
If I was raised in that place, then anytime I would have seen it on screen. How are times that I have seen them on screen? They look calm and relaxed out in a field, hanging out with their friends. And even when you see the videos when they're crossing the street, they look so calm and serene. And the times when people go up and pet a horse is really big. And even cows, people go and they milk cows. And so there's these other really big animals, and elephants.
People ride elephants.
And I don't personally, I'm not remembering a time when I have personally pet an elephant. There may have been a time, but yeah, anytime I've seen other people interact, either in person or on screen, an elephant is an enormous animal. So,
and you're talking about, like, even when they're crossing the road. I've been to Yellowstone, and it's huge. And so you're driving on the road. The bison end up walking on the road. They either block your way, or you have to like you do have to drive super slow, like past them, because they are walking on the road. They are close enough to reach out and touch. That they're on the road with you. So yeah, and they're slow and they look really calm because they're just doing their thing.
And they look fluffy.
They do look so fluffy and cute. Cows have horns. Yeah. So there's other cultural things too that is common sense between cultures, but that doesn't translate unless you're actually taught it, because one thing I'd read is that most other mammals, they only have their babies for a short time. Even the moms that keep their babies with them and raise their children, they don't keep them for the amount of time that humans do. 18 years to have your baby at home with you is an extremely long time for mammals. And so what is the difference between us as humans and other species? And the thought that was given that I read is it's to teach culture, that as we're raised, there's the walking, talking, potty training, and then reading, writing, different things like that. And then from there, it's culture and socialization and how to fit into your culture. And so one big thing is, I think it's Japan, that if you're to be good at international relations, is that the one that is super into gift giving, that you always have to bring a gift, that it's a sign of respect and it's just what you do. But if you're not taught that and you don't show up and you don't bow and do all these things, that can be seen as a sign of disrespect.
There's probably certain things also that would not be appropriate to give as a gift, which I wouldn't even know what that is. But you saying that is oh, no, there's probably other ways to trip.
Right, along the way. Yeah. I know I'm supposed to give a gift, so I'll give this. Yeah. So there's different cultural things, and that's why we have people who study international relations, and that's a job you can have, is being able to be that bridge and help politicians, business people make those international relations smoothly, because it's not common sense. We spend our lifetimes learning our culture. Another thing is, even within our culture. Oh no, what were you going to say?
Oh, I just, you talking about culture. And so it's kind of location. Well, culture is, anyway, because with the bugs or whatever in the grass so we moved from when I was a teenager, we moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, and over in the East Coast, you don't talk to people in lines. So I remember being in a candy store and waiting in line, and I had never been in that candy store, and there's a lot of history, and it was really cool. And so I think I remember saying something to somebody in line, or maybe the person I was with was saying something to the person in line, and just the look of, what do you, I don't remember if they said anything, but just this look of, why are you talking to me? this kind of a look. And I'm not remembering a whole bunch of the details, but it seems like we were either on a day trip. We were in vacation mode. We were in uh, and it was a candy store. Like we were in fun mode. And but then when we moved to the West Coast, I don't remember where I was, but I was in line and somebody started just talking like they would an old friend. Yeah, so, and just whatever, shooting the breeze. And it took me quite a while to not be shocked every single time that it was such a different culture shock.
Well, and like they bring that up, like culture within our own country, because our country is pretty huge, and there are different things. Well, and isn't there even like a difference between like Northeast and like the South? I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm in Virginia, and I've heard different things. Oh,
so are you north or are you south? Like, where's the line?
I don't actually know. I'm still trying to figure it out. So if you can let me know in the comments if Virginia is actually north or south. Different people I think claim it. And well, and also then it's like, oh, the Northern Virginia, which is right next to Washington, D.C., which is super metropolitan, and then there's Southern Virginia, which is right next to North Carolina. I think North Carolina is south. So,
well, I would even guess that even the east and west side of the state of Virginia would also have enough cultural difference. That'd be my guess.
I don't know. I don't hear anything about the west side of Virginia a whole lot. See, I'm still trying to learn. And that was a big thing for me actually coming out here, where I was like, oh, I don't know if this new bug that I'm seeing is safe or not. Because you just grow up kind of like knowing these things, and like these bugs here, I don't know, or like the leaves out there, like if like that one's gonna give me an allergic reaction, or if it's safe to touch or not, and just birds, the bird calls sounding different. Anyways, I've adjusted more to like walking outside and feeling like it's more normal than just like being like bombarded by sounds and sights and like feeling like I'm out of place as much. So common sense as applies to geography, culture, gender, families. One thing, that the nail. I feel like it's popular enough, but maybe there's people who haven't heard about it. There's a video about the nail in the head that, which sounds crazy to just say it like that, but go look up the video. This lady, she has a nail in her head, and the guy is trying to ask, like, be a loving, supporting husband and be like, well, but like, how do we fix it? Like, and she's like, I don't know. There just feels like there's this pressure and it hurts. And he's like, that's because you have a nail in your head. And she's like, you're not listening to how I'm feeling, because for guys, and so it's driving him up the wall, but because there's a nail in her head. And so she just took it out. She'd be fine. But for guys, they want to fix things. That's their main priority, and how they're wired to think. And that's great. That's awesome. And so then for guys, you don't ask another guy for help unless like you literally cannot solve it yourself. Like, unless you legitimately need help fixing a problem, you go to somebody else to help you fix your problem. But for women, how we operate is a lot more emotion based, and just like we just need to verbalize and talk it through. And then that just like helps us feel better, and that usually just like solves the problem, and we'll go take care of it ourselves. But that's how we operate. You look like you have something to say.
Well, I was just thinking that that I I don't have the physical strength to always accomplish everything I'm wanting to do, and so I have to think through things differently than just to power muscle through. So yeah, my brain is going back through different examples of of how that's been applicable to me.
Or like for women that we I've heard it described where like the waves of our emotions are like the waves of an ocean. That for men it's more just like if they get too emotional, they kind of like go into their like little man cave inside, and then once they come out, then they're fine and they've dealt with their emotions. But for women, we have kind of this ebb and flow of our emotions, that we need to have a good cry. At least, what would you say? Once a month, just have a good cry. And it just helps release all the emotions, and then we're fine. But like that's very strange for a newly married man, maybe, who either like hasn't realized that before about women, or maybe didn't grow up in a home with women, or even like healthy emotional regulation, like type of things. But which didn't you have to also explain that to me once puberty hit for me, that it was like this is what happens, Natalie. It's why am I feeling?
I want to, yeah, there was a certain, you were, I don't know if you came to me or I came to you, and you were crying, and I was like, oh, what's happening? What's wrong? And you're like, I don't know. I'm just crying. And immediately because you're my oldest, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And it was actually one of those times as a parent where you're like, don't laugh. This is not the time to laugh. And not that I was thinking your roller coaster of emotions was funny. It was more from the perspective of, here we go, like this.
We're at the beginning of the roller coaster, and we're going to be going up and down now.
Yeah. You have no idea. So it was more that kind of like when the toddler gets devastated and cries when their banana breaks in half. What are you going to do as an adult? That can come across as funny, but maybe that's not the best time to be pointed to them while they laugh. You need to, the number of times I have to quickly turn away so that I can regulate my emotions.
No, because,
not laugh in their face.
Because, and I love that about you, that you're like, because there's a lot of parents that I know that would be like super frustrating to them, that it would be like, your banana literally just broke in half, why are you having a meltdown over this? But to choose to like laugh about it, be like, wow, that is like just actually ridiculous that you would cry over a broken banana, because that's what you do. You eat a banana and it breaks when it but that so many times throughout my life that you do choose to like laugh about things just because you see that life is like a bigger picture, and it's like in the grand scheme of things, that's kind of a ridiculous thing to like get emotional about.
But here's where I have had to learn that lesson personally, because I was that kid who got so emotional about everything all the time, and others would laugh at So in school, siblings and just all that because it was funny to them. But it was devastating to me. And so, yeah, over the years to really step back and say, okay, why are other people laughing and then they're trying to be friends with me or do this fun thing with me? But then if I see a movie or a TV show, we're laughing about those same things. And so what I have had to learn for myself, and especially with raising you kids, is that the more I did separate myself from it enough to the point of picturing it like I would if I was watching a movie or reading a story or listening to somebody share a story, or if I shared this story with somebody later, it actually makes me think of what happened yesterday. But the point being that I have had to learn that myself, because it is when you're not in the moment and you're not taking it personally, it's funny. It is funny. And well, let's go with that then. Let's go with funny.
Let's start out with laughing and seeing it as funny rather than sad or frustrating or an inconvenience or anything like that.
And I shared that story with you kids, and I was expecting laughter, and there wasn't laughter, and so I thought, oh, I did not word it the way I thought I worded it.
You had shared a story yesterday about eating blueberries in the morning and then and going about your day, doctor's office, thrift store, you were having a blast. Came home a couple hours later, there was blueberry stains on your mouth.
My mouth. Because I put them in a little baggie to eat on the way to where I was going, because I knew I'd be gone from the house for how long. I didn't plan for enough time for breakfast, and so I was so proud of myself that I had them just in a snack baggie so I could have them come up to the top. And so when I was done, no blueberry stains on my hand. I was like, woo! But it still took me a long enough time to get there, of a drive that didn't even cross my mind to check my reflection in the mirror. I saw so many people, at least 12 people, if not like face to face and somebody even like looked at me and leaned in and was like, I really like your earrings. They were a different pair, but and I'm like, oh, thanks. So I'm thinking, no, like, what were they thinking? They're like, oh, this is just her. Just so many purple bluish dots. I think I even had one on my nose.
But see, they're laughing about it. They think this is like a hilarious joke. Like, so many people saw me like that. That is just so great.
Because if that was in a movie, wouldn't that be hilarious to see that on screen? Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. I don't know that we have like any like one-liner like type of thing to like close with. It's more just like that to question the reality that's been handed and to get curious about maybe why other people are doing things. Because that's a big thing that I've learned from you as well. Like when approaching situations like this, to automatically give people the benefit of the doubt that you don't know what they're struggling with, what they're trying to accomplish that day, like their culture, their background, where they're from, like all the things that maybe you're breaking into their norm. And
within your personal boundary of safety, comfort, appropriateness. Yeah.
Right.
Not
like,
to be dismissive of that. Yeah.
Right. To also, like, we want to be safe. we instead of calling it common sense, I would call it more like an inner sense of a good judgment call, to make good friends, to assess strangers in the store, on the street, and say like, hey, am I gonna be safe? Is this someone that I can share things with? More type, yeah. And what is your own capability of being able to offer, accepting, and we all got to start somewhere, and be able to show that love then to other people, even if we just meet them. Last thought.
Yeah. Common sense says that if you make eggs, whatever's okay to put on eggs is okay to put on any kind of eggs. So if it's scrambled or boiled, or a crepe is made mostly of eggs, pancake is made. So if you put ketchup on your scrambled eggs, then doesn't that mean you could put ketchup on a crepe or on egg pancakes?
Food for thought. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like to connect with us outside of our podcast, we have our snail mail club, Letters from Gwen. Gwendolyn is our fictional character. She writes to her grandma every month, and we share life lessons and uplifting messages in there as well every single month, with other extra goodies, stickers, scent cards, quotes, things like that every month. And we just finished our giveaway from this past month. And our winner is Mariah. She was participating in our Facebook group, Creative Compassionate Connections. You want to go ahead and show what Mariah will be receiving in her giveaway?
This is a notebook that is lined off-white, just barely off-white, and there's artwork that's been done on the front, and a finish to help keep it, and then a pen or pencil zipper pouch, and I've got some stickers and gonna be putting some other fun cutesy stuff in there.
So thank you so much to Mariah and everybody who is supporting us and commenting and following along with us on this journey. And hopefully this helps you along your journey as well. So thank you for being with us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.